Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to this walkthrough that we're going to do on what might help in best practices for a visitor orientation breakout as you are talking to the visitors who attend your meeting. I'm Crystal Wintels, Executive Director and Franchise Owner of the BNI Golden Horseshoe and BNI Niagara region. And with me I have Matt Sherb, who is the Area Director in our region, and I have Irndeep Badial, who is the Director of Training for our region. So our purpose for sharing this video with you this morning is just to support our visitor hosts in the closing orientation of their chapter meeting. We've spent some time putting together some slides that will help you draw from your visitors what they'd like their next steps to be. And so just as a preamble before we move into the actual slides, I'm going to take you through what would be a visitor orientation closing session. Just as a preamble, the thing that we want to come away with, the objective that we have when we are doing our visitor orientation, is to know what our visitors would like to do next. So I'm going to share with you just one best practice and one kind of training and coaching tip before we move into the orientation. You don't have to sell in this last 10 minutes. The meeting's already done that. So what our job is as visitor host orientation specialist is to make sure that every person who is interested at different levels of submitting an application knows what they can do next. Okay, so we're going to spend a little time after we've gone through the actual breakout session. So this would happen in a breakout room after your chapter meeting. And Erin, Matt, and I will spend a little time after the breakout session talking about some best practices and some tips as we go forward. Okay, so your visitor host, your president, whoever's running the meeting is going to move all of your visitors into your breakout room. So visitor host team, you're going to be the facilitators in this breakout room. This is the slide that should be on the screen as you move into the breakout room. And so some of the things that you want to say is you want to say to the visitors, you know, thank you for joining us at our chapter meeting today. We are delighted to have hosted you so that you can see what we do in BNI. And I just want to go around the room, if you will, and I want to ask everybody for their feedback as to what they experienced at today's meeting. And so we've broken down our feedback into an A, B, C, and D. And so I'd like you to share with us which of these appealed to you most. And I say it that way because oftentimes we have people that come to BNI and they're super impressed by what we do, and they say all four of those things appealed to me most. So let me just walk you through them. Is it the thing that appealed to you most? Is it the prospect of increasing your sales and your business success through regular referrals? Is it the possibility of being a valued member of a great referral team? Might it be the ability to build long-term relationships with other business owners? Or might it be the proven structures and systems that we use in BNI? So I'm going to call upon our two visitors this morning, and I'm just going to ask you to share with me, if you want to unmute, I'm going to ask you to share with me which of those four characteristics appealed to you most. So why don't we start with Matt?
Well, you know, I got to say, I really liked how the meeting was really succinct and kept on time. So really, there's a D there, but for me, really making those relationships to build my business is really important. So I'm going to have to say C.
So C is the long-term relationships. And see,
yes.
The great thing, so that's excellent. And the great thing about what we do in BNI is we become a support network for each other. And so not only do we generate referrals, but the way we generate referrals is to build deep and trusted relationships. So we can align beautifully on that for you. Erin, do you want to share with me which of the A, B, C, and D appealed to you the most?
Sure. For me, it's definitely the structures and the systems. So D, I love that your meeting was on time. Everyone knew what was happening. There weren't any surprises. And, you know, your chapter president did a really good job of getting us all through that meeting. Like, I wasn't sitting there thinking, hey, what's going to happen next? It was very clear.
And so one of the things, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that with me. One of the things that I think appeals to a whole lot of our members is that we do have a process. I don't know about you, but I've gone to a number of business meetings that didn't seem to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that drives me a little bit, anyway, gets me a little bit impatient. And so the structure is what allows us to be accountable to each other and to be able to build those relationships as well. So everything that we do in BNI has a manual and has structures attached to it. You probably have a couple of questions, Erin, about the structure as we move forward, and I'm happy to answer those questions for you as well. So thank you both very much for sharing those with me. So what I'd like to share with you next is what your steps would be should you decide that BNI is a good fit for you as a marketing program. So the first thing we have is an electronic application. You would do your application and fee payment online at www.bnigh.com. I invite you to write that down or make note of that website because you'll find a lot of interesting information there. And we will also follow up with you after the meeting. So once you've submitted your application, the membership committee screens your application, and when you're accepted, the chapter president announces your membership at the next meeting. So if we can all pull that together in 7 days, that means you could start with us as early as next week. Once you have been accepted into a chapter and we finished our screening and our interviewing, you would then complete the member success program after you've been inducted to accelerate the referrals that you generate for yourself and for your business. So it's a pretty straightforward application. I'm just going to show you what it looks like on the screen, so just so you know what you're looking for. We will be sending you a link to the application, but if you'd like to get started a little bit quicker or have a look at it a little bit sooner, please just go to bnigh.com and click on Pay Online, and you will find the application right there. It's a 2-page application. All of the blue boxes are fillable by you. Couple things I just want to bring your attention to. We will share with you our standards and expectations. We will ask you to share your qualifications. And we're also looking for 3 client references. And so as you start to fill in that application and as we start to talk to you and interview you, we'll share with you what we're going to ask your client references, but we want to have a sense as to where your network sits. So does that seem pretty straightforward to the 2 of you as we go forward? Excellent. So now I'm going to ask you to share one more thing with me, just how you'd like us to follow up with you. So if you can qualify as a 1, 2, or 3, that would be terrific. If the next step for you is this sounds absolutely excellent and I want to be part of it and I'm ready to go, let me know you're a 1. If it sounds like a really good idea, but you do have some questions, that is excellent. Let me know that you're a 2. And if it's just not for you right now, but you would like to stay friends of BNI, we'd be delighted to accept any of your referrals that you might have for business people who could benefit from what we're doing. So if you are a 3, then please do let me know that you're a 3. So I'm going to ask our visitors to unmute again and just take me through whether you're a 1, a 2, or a 3. Why don't we start with Erin this time?
At this point, I'm a 2. I think it's really fantastic. I love what I was able to see today, but I do have a couple questions that I was wondering if maybe we could chat or connect about.
Yeah, so Erin, why don't you just ask me a couple of those questions now? We've got a nice intimate group, so possibly there might be other people that have that question. If it's going to get in a little more detail, then you and I can talk one-to-one and maybe take it offline. Is there a question that comes to your mind?
So the biggest one for me right now is the time commitments. And I believe you meet every week, is that right?
We do meet every week, but the meeting is always 90 minutes.
Okay, which is great to know that the structure is definitely there. So outside of that, what type of time commitment should I be looking to put on? Because that's my biggest hesitation right now, is finding the 90 minutes and if it's going to be anything on top of that.
Yeah. What we encourage our members to do, particularly those members who want to see a high return on investment, is to invest some time in getting to know the other members. And we typically will suggest that you do 1 1-to-1 on a weekly basis. That will generally last about an hour. And then as you're doing a little bit of the admin work, a little bit of inviting activities, a little bit of recording referrals, that might be tops another hour. So all in, we're looking somewhere between 2, 3, 3.5 hours. But the one thing to think about is that's direct marketing time. So although it sounds, and it sounds like carving out some significant time, you'll find that when you're able to invest in those one-to-ones, that's where the referrals are. And we'll teach you exactly how to ask for those referrals. Does that help put it in perspective?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Is there any other question at this point?
I think I'm okay for now.
Okay, cool. Matt, I'm also going to ask you if you can share with me what you'd like our next steps to be with you. Are you a 1, a 2, or a 3?
So I'd probably say that I'm a 2, Crystal. The big thing watching all the activity taking place in the chapter, I'm concerned I can't bring a referral every single week, and that I feel like I got to have something every single week. So that's the only thing that I'm somewhat concerned about, is not being able to contribute every single week.
Yeah, and I think that's music to my ears, actually, when I hear that somebody's concerned about the giving, because our corporate philosophy is givers gain. And so here's the thing. If you don't have something to give every single week, we're not going to kick you out. And there's often a myth out there in BNI that, oh my gosh, if you don't have a referral every single week, they'll kick you out. We will not. Here's what we will do. We'll make sure that you have all of the best techniques, all of the best education, all of the tools that have helped us build these referral networks over the last 30 years. So we're going to make sure you have all the education, and we're going to teach you how to listen for referrals. And the great thing about BNI for so many of our members, when they learn how to listen on behalf of others, you are always standing in the middle of a referral. And we will just teach you how to do that so that you know what kind of things to listen for. And that's what you learn through those one-to-ones that I mentioned to Erin. Does that sound like something that might be able to align for you?
Yeah, that could help.
Okay, that's excellent. So what I'm going to share with you as we come to the end of our time together, if you would like to spend a little bit more time with me and you've come up with, or you've thought of some other questions that you might have, I'm happy to stay online here with you for a little bit. If you prefer to go back into the chapter meeting, you're welcome to do that and join the regular chapter meeting. So we have come to the end of our orientation, and as I just want to remind you, we will be sending you the application, and our visitor host follow-up specialist will be following up with you to ensure that we're able to answer your questions and spend some time going over the application with you. So I want to thank you both for coming to our meeting today. We enjoyed meeting you. We certainly look forward to future connections with you and appreciate the time you invested in us. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of what could be an example of a visitor host orientation closing session at the end of a meeting. Now we did that, I didn't time, it's full out, but I think Matt and Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, we did that in just around 10 minutes, maybe a little more.
Yep, just shy of 10 minutes.
Just shy of 10 minutes. So here's the thing that I really would like to recommend to you. We don't have to sell the meeting anymore. We don't have to sell BNI anymore. All we have to do in the visitor orientation is help our visitors figure out how it's going to fit into their life. So you heard that both Matt and Erin asked typical questions about BNI, and usually the questions that we get are based on time, are based on effort, and are based on money. Right? And generally speaking, most of our questions come into those kind of 3 areas of concern. And seriously, when a visitor asks a question like Matt did, gee, I don't know if I can give, that is music to my ears. It means they're thinking along the lines of where we would like their thinking to be. And when you've got someone who likes structure and process, like Erin presented herself as the visitor, they need to know that they can fit this in to their life, because they have a but they have a structured life, and they want to be able to know that they can dedicate the time that will make them feel they can make it be a success for themselves. Okay? Anything else that we want to share, Erin or Matt, as we...
I'll start with just, we were a small group, right? There's really only 2 visitors in the room. But if you're doing a visitor day and there's a lot more people in the room, maybe the A, B, C, D isn't necessarily something you'll go to each person and ask, but rather maybe use the chat function in Zoom to be able to put the individual, just drop your A, B, C, or D. So at least you can track that information. Might just sort of speed things up when you've got more people in the room. Otherwise, the visitor orientation could go longer.
Absolutely right. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to suggest that if you've got 5 visitors or fewer, you can probably have everybody open up their mic, and it's kind of nice because it's a networking opportunity as well. But if you've got more than 5 visitors, you may want to, well, you probably will need to use the chat for the answers. The other thing, just as a Zoom tip, you can save that chat, and then you will have a record of what the responses were that you can share with your visitor host follow-up expert. Erin, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Just in terms of who should be doing most of the talking when in the visitor orientation. So I understand visitor hosts should be guiding the conversation, but who should be doing a majority of the talking?
Well, I mean, again, if we can, based on the number of people in the room, the visitors should be doing the majority of the talking. Now, we kept it very succinct and very short. Let's face it, people are going to have more questions. If you want to, as the facilitator, if you want to let people go, allow them to go after you've shared what the next steps are. So the most important thing is to share the next steps so everyone knows. The next most important thing is to know who's going to need a little bit more time. And those people that answer a 2 are going to want a little more of your time. And also those people that indicate that what appealed to them most was a C or a D, they're likely going to need a little bit more of your time, right? And if as a visitor host orientation specialist, you can allow yourself to give them that extra 5-10 minutes. We've been hearing from chapters who have implemented these tweaks. They're getting 2 and 3 applications in the last 3 weeks, just because they've changed their approach as to who they're letting speak in the visitor orientation, right? Does that sort of help with what we were looking to do there?
Yeah, absolutely. And then another question, is it appropriate for visitor hosts to be sharing testimonials in the breakout room? And if so, when would that be appropriate to do?
Well, I don't think it's necessary, right? Because when you're using the formality of the slides, I think that, again, the number one objective is to present those 5-6 slides the way they are. But where the testimonial would come out is when you're talking to somebody who is a 2 and has more questions. And if you relate that back to, you know what, when I submitted my application to BNI, I was hugely concerned about the time investment. And so what I found is that when I'm able to dedicate that hour, when I'm able to prep for my meeting, taking a half an hour or so, that's getting me the kind of referrals I'm looking for, right? So it took me a couple of weeks to adjust everything, but it becomes an ongoing and recurring meeting for me now. And I think that's the most appropriate way for a visitor host to share the testimonials, to share their own story. Right? And again, we don't have to keep selling on it's been great for my business, I've got so many referrals. We already know that because we saw that in the meeting. What we now need to share is a little bit more of the logistics of how can I fit in to this referral network. And those are the questions we're looking to answer. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it comes down to almost saying less is more, totally. Right? That we really don't want to feel like we're having to coerce them. When I speak to some of the visitor host orientation folks, they're like, oh, but I feel like I have to sell. You don't need to. The meeting did that for you. So less is more.
No. And so this can also be a good training for somebody who sells for their own business, which is all of us, right? When it comes to the close, there's a difference between selling and closing. When it comes to the close, you stop talking and you let people get there on their own or not. But either way, you know what the next steps are, right? So we've already done the presentation of benefits through the entire meeting. Now is the time to ask people what they want to do next, right? And it shouldn't take a ton of time. We don't want to discourage people to share with us what their objections might be, but usually their objections are them thinking through how they can make it fit into their lives, right? And I think we don't give everybody the chance to say that to us, right? So I'm going to show you one thing. This is for our visitor hosts. I'm going to show you what this slideshow looks like because we're going to make this available for you. So what I've done that you can see on my screen right now is we have put the scripting notes below each one of the slides. So when you're presenting the slides, you've got the scripting notes right there. We've also put the best practices notes in italics. So we're going to make that available to you at bnighresources.com, and we're going to send you an email that gives you all this information. So under each one of the slides, it gives you the best practices approach as to the kind of things that you're asking for. So all of those notes will be available to you. And if you just print that off, I had a printed version right here so I could refer to the notes as well. I'm going to suggest that at the beginning, you just don't try to wing it. I'm not a big fan of winging it. I'm a big fan of knowing what I want to ask and knowing what I want to find out. So we kept it very, very short. We have 7 slides here, which we are going to make available to you in this slideshow, and then you'll be able to implement that as we move forward. Is there anything else that we want to add, Erin or Matt, before we close out our session today?
No, I think that covers it. Just making sure that you've got shareability when you get into the meeting room. Make sure that your secretary treasurer is giving you access to that. There might be a setting in Zoom, but again, as long as you've got that, share that with people. And it's good from a professional approach to demonstrate that with a presentation, the visitor host orientation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we'll always recommend is do a bit of a tech run through, right? Just make sure that the breakout room's happening, that the screen shares are happening, so that when the visitors move into the breakout room, visitor hosts, you're already there and you've got that visitor orientation screen up on their screens. Right? So that because what happens sometimes is we get thrown when the tech doesn't work the way we thought it should. But even if your slides don't show up, if you have a printed version of it, you can still take them through what the next steps are. And you can still ask the questions, right? So just keeping that in mind as well. But a run through is always going to help make sure that the tech doesn't glitch you up, as it were. And I'm the kind of person that if the tech can glitch me up, it will. So let's just do a little practice run on that. Okay, that's what we wanted to share with you in this session. We wanted to try to keep it as short as possible. If you do have any questions, all of us are available through bnigh.com, just our first names at bnigh.com, and you can get to all of us through email, and we are happy to answer any questions. Our goal is to help you add those high quality referral partners that I know all of our members are looking for. And as we continue to tweak this visitor orientation process, we're going to be able to include more and more high quality business people as part of our chapters. So thanks very much for taking the time to listen to our recording. And remember, the only dumb question is an unasked question. Thanks very much.